All right, this is our constructor set. This was posted on one of the review tests. So here we have a number cube. This class is given to us. There are three types of cubes. There is a number cube, which returns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have a letter cube, and then we have a color cube. Notice this is the constructor for a regular cube. It takes the string of the cube type. So if I wanted a number cube, I would say string number cube. And we also have a roll method, a cube pair. So if we create a cube pair called P1, we can put in a number cube and a color cube. If we create one with just one parameter, that means both of our dice are going to be that. If we roll our cubes, we're going to get the two values of our cubes concatenated together. So what we're going to write is, so our cube pair is going to be two different cubes. So notice our cube pair here is going to take a number and a color. If we roll a number cubes, it's going to return the two different rolls concatenated together. We can also create a cube pair with only one parameter, and that means both dice are going to be the same type. We're asked to write the entire class, so two constructors and a roll method. Lap tracker. A lap tracker, we will write, and this is your logic one, I believe. A lap tracker object creates calls to a constructor with the int parameter that continues how often to reset the lap tracker. So I'm going to call that number of calls, because that's how many times we can add laps before we have to reset it back to 0. So think of that as like 7 days. Every 7 days, we're going to reset our Fitbits. A lap tracker class contains add laps method, which adds lap to the lap count. This method has an int parameter that represents the number of laps to be added with a precondition that the parameter is always positive. Lap tracker object repeatedly resets the lap count to 0 after a number of calls to add laps, which is your number of calls, as indicated in the constructor parameter. An add laps method returns an int that represents the lap count as illustrated by the following. Next question was so here we have table. The next, so here we have, first we created the count, which I'm going to say I'm going to have the number of laps that we do each time. That's going to be like my count. I'm going to have the number of calls. That's how many times we can call number of laps. And then I'm going to have the reset frequency, is how often we have to reset everything. And I guess this still is another class question. Sorry. It was. So it's going to be the cube class. So public class cube. Cube pair, sorry. Next thing is going to be your data types. We're going to have two different cubes. And remember, all of our data types in your class question have to be private. So the first one is private. Data type was cube. Cube 1. Our second one, again, is private. Its data type is cube, and it's going to be cube 2. Now we're going to write our one parameter constructor. So remember, the constructor has the same name as the class, so public cube pair. And looking at the constructor from the cube class, remember you're going to pass in the type of cube. There is no E at the end of string. So here we're going to have cube 1 is going to be of a new cube because we're creating a new object, and we're going to have the type of cube it is. And same thing with cube 2. Again, it's a new object, so you have to use the new operator. It's a new cube. And again, it's going to be of the same type. Our second constructor is going to have 2 parameters. So again, it's going to have the same name as the class. So public cube pair. But this time we're going to pass in string type 1 and string type 2. And we're going to create our new cubes. So this time, cube 1 is going to be a new cube of data type 1. And again, we're going to need cube 2. It's going to be a new cube of type 2. There's our 2 different constructors. The next thing we need to do is roll our cubes. Remember, each time we roll a single cube, it returns the type. So we're going to have public string roll cubes. So I'm going to create a memory location called result. Set it equal to an empty string. And then we're going to roll our first cube, and we're going to add it to the result. Result plus equals, we're going to roll, or cube1.roll, sorry, object, and then call the method. So cube1.roll. And the second one, we're going to add in the result. And it's going to be cube2.roll. That will concatenate the 2 rolls. And then, of course, we had a return type, so we have to make sure we return the result. And that's all we were asked to do in this problem. So how was this one scored? You got 1 point for method header. The next point comes from instantiating the 2 different cubes. You must use the word private. The third point comes from the method header for the constructors. The fourth point comes from, so you get 1 point for this assigning everything correctly. The fifth point comes from the method header for rolls cubes. The sixth point comes from creating the result. Right here, rolling the 2 dice, and then the last one is returning the result. Put a different one in there. So this is public class lap tracker. Next, we have our instance variables. We have our number of laps. We have the number of laps, and that is a integer. Remember that all your instance variables here need to be private for your class question. We're going to have the number of calls we're allowed to make. before we reset our laps back to 0. That's going to be our current count of laps that we have. And then we also have how often we're going to reset the lap counter. So our reset frequency. So when we look back, our constructor, we only have one constructor. It sets the number of laps, the number of calls equal to 0, and our reset frequency to reset frequency. So public lap tracker. We're going to pass in an integer that's going to be reset frequency. So we currently have made no laps. So we currently have made no calls. And our reset frequency is equal to R. So there's your constructor. The next thing we have to do is add laps. So public is going to return how many laps we currently have. So we're going to add laps. In here, we're going to pass in additional laps. So if our number calls equals the reset frequency, we set everything back. So our number calls is going to go back to 0, and our number of laps gets set back to 0. Otherwise, the number of calls is going to increase. The number of laps is going to be your additional laps that you made. And then lastly, we're going to return our number of laps. And that's the entire class.